The full moon hung heavy in the night sky, its silver light filtering through the ancient pines like liquid mercury, painting the world in shades of pearl and shadow. Damaris Cosmos walked alone through the forest, her white hair catching moonbeams, transforming her into something ethereal, something not quite of this world. Each strand seemed to glow with its own inner light, a beacon in the darkness that had marked her as different from birth. The red dress she wore whispered against the undergrowth, a splash of crimson against the darkness, the fabric clinging to her slender form as she moved with the grace of someone who had spent more time among trees than among people. She had always preferred the night, the solitude, the way the forest breathed differently when the rest of her pack slept safe in their beds, warm and unaware. Out here, in the embrace of shadow and silver, Damaris felt most herself. The weight of other wolves' expectations fell away, their sideways glances, their whispered questions about her unusual coloring, their subtle exclusions from pack gatherings. None of it could touch her here. The forest accepted her without judgment. The moon illuminated her path without question. The wind sang through the branches, a lullaby meant only for her. She had been gathering night-blooming herbs, plants that only revealed their medicinal properties under moonlight. Her basket was nearly full, the fragrant leaves and delicate flowers nestled among soft moss to protect them. Healing was her gift, passed down from her mother, though she had surpassed her teacher long ago. Perhaps because she spent so much time in solitude, learning the forest's secrets, understanding the language of root and leaf in ways that wolves who stayed close to the pack house never could. But tonight, something was wrong. The air tasted of copper and earth, a metallic tang that coated her tongue and made her stomach clench with instinctive unease. The usual chorus of nocturnal creatures had fallen silent, leaving only the wind to speak through the trees, and even that seemed hushed, cautious. Damaris felt her instincts sharpen, her senses reaching out into the darkness like invisible fingers, searching for the source of the wrongness. The forest was warning her, or perhaps calling her. She paused at the edge of a small clearing, closing her eyes, letting her other senses take over. There, beneath the scent of pine and loam, something else. Blood, fresh blood, and pain. The kind of pain that radiated from a body like heat, thick and cloying in the air. Every rational thought told her to turn back, to return to her cabin with her herbs, and forget whatever tragedy had befallen someone in the forest tonight. It was not her concern. She was a healer, yes, but she was not a hero. She was a solitary wolf who preferred the company of plants to people, who kept to the fringes of pack territory precisely to avoid entanglement in pack affairs. But her feet carried her forward anyway. She found him at the edge of the ravine, where the ground fell away into darkness, where the rocks jutted up like broken teeth from the earth's mouth. At first, she thought it was a fallen tree, some massive thing torn down by recent storms, its branches splayed at unnatural angles. The moonlight played tricks here, where shadow pooled deepest. But as she drew closer, her breath caught in her throat, lodging there like a stone. A man lay crumpled among the rocks and dried blood, his body twisted at angles that spoke of violence and desperation. His chest rose and fell in shallow, labored breaths, each one a struggle, each one a victory. Barely alive, barely holding on to the thread that connected body to soul. Damaris approached cautiously, her heart hammering against her ribs like a caged bird desperate for freedom. The healer in her catalogued his injuries even from a distance. Multiple lacerations, broken ribs, at least 3. Compound fracture of the left leg, possible internal bleeding, head trauma. He should be dead. The fact that he still breathed was either a testament to his strength or a cruelty of fate. In the moonlight, she could see him clearly now. He was enormous, his muscular frame too large for an ordinary wolf, the kind of size that came with alpha blood and decades of training. His black hair fell long and tangled across his face, matted with dirt and blood, some of it fresh enough to still glisten. A thick beard covered his jaw, though she could see the strong line of it beneath the growth. His hands, curled loosely at his sides, were huge, scarred from countless battles, the knuckles split and bleeding. But it was the mark on his exposed shoulder that made her freeze, that sent ice water through her veins and made her chest tighten with a complex mixture of fear and something she could not name. An alpha mark. Not just any alpha. The pattern was wrong, the design unfamiliar. The intricate swirls and symbols that denoted rank and lineage were not the ones she had known all her life. This man did not belong to her pack, which meant he belonged to the only other pack in the region, the enemy. Before we continue with the story, I want to thank everyone who supports the channel and loves our Alpha King romances. In the pinned comment, you'll find a special selection of the best Amazon audiobooks that inspire our stories. If you purchase any audiobook through those links, you'll be directly supporting the channel and helping us create more stories. Tell us where you're watching from and how old you are in the comments. I hope you enjoy the story. The Northern Pack. The wolves who had killed her father in a border skirmish 12 years ago. The wolves who raided their hunting grounds and disputed their territory claims. The wolves whose very name was synonymous with hatred in her pack house. The wolves her alpha had sworn to destroy, inch by blood-soaked inch, until nothing remained but memory and ash. Every rational thought screamed at her to leave him, to let nature take its course, to return home and pretend she had seen nothing. Perhaps even to finish what his attackers had started. One less enemy in the world, one more tally in her pack's favor. She could tell Alpha Matthias that she had found him already dead. Who would question her? Who would doubt the word of a solitary healer who kept to herself and bothered no one? The rivalry between their packs had existed for generations, fed by territorial disputes, old grudges, and the kind of hatred that becomes tradition. Children were raised on stories of Northern Pack treachery. Young wolves learned to fight by imagining Northern Pack enemies. Finding an enemy alpha dying in her territory should have filled her with satisfaction, with grim justice, with righteousness. But as she stood there, watching his chest struggle for each breath, watching the moonlight paint his pain in silver and shadow, all she felt was a pull, a magnetic force she could not name, could not resist, could not rationalize. Something ancient and undeniable whispered through her blood, resonated in her bones, sang in her soul. Save him. Against every instinct of self-preservation, against every law of her pack, against every lesson she had learned about survival and loyalty, Damaris knelt beside him. The ground was cold beneath her knees, damp with dew and blood. She touched his neck with trembling fingers, searching for a pulse. The skin was burning hot, fever raging through him like wildfire. But beneath the heat, she found it. A pulse, faint and irregular, like a candle flickering in the wind, like a drum beaten by exhausted hands. But there, life, stubborn and tenacious, refusing to let go even when death pulled hard on the other end. His eyes opened. They were gold. Pure, molten gold, glowing even in his weakened state, like coins held up to firelight, like honey captured in amber. They focused on her face with difficulty, confusion swimming in their depths like fish beneath murky water. His lips moved, cracked, and bloodied, but no sound emerged. Only a faint exhalation that might have been a word, might have been a plea, might have been nothing at all. You should not be here, she thought, her mind racing even as her hands moved of their own accord, checking his wounds with practiced efficiency. I should not be doing this. This is madness. This is suicide. This is betrayal of everything I have ever known. But her hands kept moving, kept assessing, kept planning. The healer in her had taken over, pushing aside politics and hatred and fear. All that mattered was the broken body before her, the life hanging by a thread, the challenge of pulling someone back from the edge of death's abyss. He had been attacked by multiple assailants. She could see that clearly now. Claw marks raked across his ribs, each one deep enough to scar, bite marks on his shoulder, his thigh, signs of a coordinated assault by trained fighters. They had overwhelmed him through numbers and treachery, had beaten him until he fell, had thrown him from the ravine to ensure he would not survive. Someone had wanted him gone. Someone had nearly succeeded. "Can you move?" she wanted to ask. But words felt dangerous. Speaking would make this real, would make her choice irreversible, would transform her from witness to accomplice. He tried to sit up and immediately collapsed, a groan of pain escaping through clenched teeth, his body convulsing with the effort. His eyes found hers again, and in them she saw something that shattered her remaining hesitation, that broke through the last wall of her resistance. Not arrogance, not the demanding superiority she expected from an alpha, especially an enemy alpha. Not entitlement or rage or the expectation that she would serve him. Just pain, raw and unfiltered and human, and beneath it, a silent plea that transcended pack loyalty and political boundaries. Please, please do not let me die here alone. Please do not let my life end in this cold place, forgotten and unmourned. Damaris made her decision. She set down her basket of herbs and slipped her arm beneath his shoulders, bracing herself against his weight. He was impossibly heavy, his body dense with muscle even in this broken state, easily twice her size, but she was stronger than she looked, and desperation gave her additional strength, adrenaline flooding her system like lightning through her veins. Together, through agonizing slowness, they managed to get him upright. He leaned against her, his breath hot against her hair, his body trembling with the effort of simply standing, his blood seeping into her red dress until they matched. "My cabin is not far," she whispered, the first words spoken between them, her voice barely audible over the wind. "Can you walk?" He nodded, though she doubted the truth of it. His jaw was clenched so tight she could see the muscles jumping beneath his beard. But he had committed now. They both had. There was no turning back. The journey took an eternity compressed into minutes that felt like hours. Every few steps he would stumble, his legs giving out, his weight suddenly too much. And every time, she would catch him, her small frame somehow supporting his massive one, her will becoming his strength. She talked to him as they moved, nonsense words meant only to keep him conscious, to keep him fighting. "Just a little farther. You are doing well. Stay with me. Do not give up. We are almost there." The forest watched them in silence, bearing witness to this impossible alliance, this mad choice. Trees that had stood for centuries leaned down as if to shelter them. The moon followed their progress, lighting their way. Even the wind seemed to guide them, pushing gently at their backs. By the time her cabin came into view, a humble structure of weathered wood and stone at the very edge of pack territory, built by her father's hands before he died, both of them were shaking with exhaustion. Damaris's muscles screamed in protest. Sweat ran down her face despite the cold. Her breath came in ragged gasps, but she did not stop, did not falter, did not let him fall. She kicked the door open with more force than necessary, splinters flying from the frame, and half-carried, half-dragged him to her bed. He collapsed onto it with a sound that was part relief, part agony, the wooden frame creaking under his weight. In the dim light of her oil lamps, flickering yellow and uncertain, she could see the full extent of his injuries. It was worse than she had thought. Much worse. It was a miracle he had survived this long. That his heart still beat. That his lungs still drew air. That he had managed to hold on through blood loss and pain that would have killed a lesser wolf. Damaris did not allow herself to think, did not allow herself to feel. She simply worked. She worked through the night like a woman possessed, like a healer in the midst of battle, like someone who had trained their entire life for this moment. She built up the fire until heat filled the cabin, until the cold could not reach him. She heated water in her largest pot, adding herbs that would fight infection and reduce fever. She cleaned wounds with water and cloth, her hands gentle but thorough, wiping away blood and dirt until she could see the true damage beneath. Some of the lacerations required stitching. She did it by lamplight, her needle steady despite her exhaustion, her stitches small and even. He would scar, but he would heal. The broken ribs she could do nothing about except wrap them tightly, supporting the bones while they knit back together. The leg was more complicated. She set it as best she could, using splints carved from firewood and strips of cloth torn from her own linens. It would need to be rebroken and set properly by someone with more skill, but for now, it would keep. The worst was the internal bleeding. She could feel it when she pressed on his abdomen, the way the flesh gave wrong, the way he gasped even in unconsciousness. There were herbs for this, potent and dangerous, that could either save a life or end it depending on the dosage. She had never used them on anything larger than a fox, had only read about their application in her mother's ancient journals. But she had no choice. She brewed the mixture carefully, measuring each ingredient with shaking hands, whispering prayers to gods she was not sure existed. When it was ready, she forced it between his lips, a drop at a time, massaging his throat to encourage swallowing. He took it without waking, his body accepting the medicine even while his mind wandered through fever dreams. When the first light of dawn began creeping through her windows, painting the world in shades of rose and gold, Damaris finally allowed herself to stop, to collapse into the chair beside her bed, to look at what she had done. An enemy alpha lay in her bed, bandaged and broken but alive. His chest rose and fell with more strength now, more regularity. The fever had broken somewhere in the dark hours, leaving his skin cool to the touch. He would survive. Against all odds, against all logic, he would survive. And she had saved him. Damaris put her head in her hands and wondered what she had just done. What consequences would follow this choice? What price she would pay for this moment of compassion? But even as fear curled in her stomach, even as logic screamed that she had made a terrible mistake, she could not regret it. When she looked at him, sleeping peacefully now, his face relaxed in a way it probably rarely was when conscious, she felt only a strange rightness. As if this was meant to be. As if everything in her life had been leading to this moment, to this choice, to this man. 3 days passed in a rhythm of care and vigilance. 3 days that felt suspended outside of time, removed from the normal flow of the world. The cabin became its own universe, its own reality, where nothing existed except the dance between life and death, between healer and patient, between stranger and something slowly becoming more. Damaris left her cabin only to gather fresh water from the stream that ran behind her home and to collect more herbs from the forest floor. Always checking, always vigilant, ensuring no one from her pack wandered near enough to discover her secret. She told herself she was simply being cautious, that she was protecting herself from accusations of treason, from the punishment that would surely come if anyone discovered she was harboring an enemy alpha. But the truth was more complicated, more frightening, more real. Each time she returned from her brief expeditions to find him still breathing, still fighting, something in her chest loosened. A tension she had not known she was carrying. Each time she changed his bandages and saw the wounds beginning to close, saw color returning to his skin where before there had been only the gray pallor of approaching death, she felt a satisfaction that had nothing to do with duty or mercy. It was personal, intimate, as if his recovery reflected something in herself, as if his healing was somehow healing her too. She was beginning to care, beginning to hope, beginning to feel things that were dangerous and foolish and entirely beyond her control. He drifted in and out of consciousness during those 3 days, pulled under by fever and exhaustion, surfacing briefly before the tide of weakness dragged him down again. But each time he woke, his eyes would find her first, tracking her movements around the cabin with an intensity that should have unsettled her, but instead felt comforting, protective, as if even in his weakened state, he was watching over her rather than the other way around. When he was lucid, she would spoon broth into his mouth, rich bone broth she had made from supplies in her larder, nutrition his body desperately needed. At first, his hands shook too much to hold the spoon himself, so she fed him with the patience of a mother with a child, wiping his chin when he spilled, never showing frustration, never making him feel diminished. On the second night, when fever gripped him again and he thrashed in the bed, calling out in a language she did not recognize, she climbed in beside him. It was the only way to keep him still, to keep him from tearing his stitches. She pressed her cool body against his burning one, her arms around his massive frame, whispering soothing words into his ear. "Hush now. You are safe. No one will hurt you here. Rest. Just rest." He calmed at the sound of her voice, at the touch of her hands, settling back into the mattress with a shuddering sigh. His head turned into her neck, his beard rough against her soft skin, his breath evening out. And she held him through the night, this stranger who was her enemy, this alpha who should have been her death, but instead felt like her destiny. By the third morning, the transformation was remarkable. She woke to find him watching her, not with the fever-glazed confusion of before, but with clear, focused awareness. Cognizance burned in those gold eyes, intelligence in something else. Gratitude? Yes. But also curiosity, wonder, questions. He was sitting up, his back against the wall, the blanket pooled around his waist, revealing the extensive bandaging across his chest and abdomen. The wrappings rose and fell with steady breaths, no longer labored, no longer desperate. He had crossed some invisible threshold during the night, moved from dying to recovering, from a body giving up to a body fighting back. "You saved my life," he said, his voice rough from disuse but deep and resonant, the kind of voice that commanded attention even when speaking softly, the kind of voice made to lead armies, to inspire loyalty, to pronounce judgments and declarations. Why? The question hung between them, heavy with implication, weighted with all the things left unsaid. Why would you save your enemy? Why would you risk everything for a stranger? Why would you care whether I lived or died? Damaris stood from her chair, where she had been pretending to sleep but actually watching him breathe, counting each inhalation like prayers. She moved to the fireplace to busy her hands with preparing tea, grinding dried leaves in her mortar, adding hot water from the kettle that always hung over the flames. Anything to avoid looking at him. Anything to avoid answering the question she had been asking herself for 3 days. She had known this moment would come, had rehearsed her answers in her mind. Practical reasons, moral obligations, the healer's oath to preserve life regardless of pack affiliation. But now, facing him, watching his gold eyes track her every movement, she found the truth slipping out before she could stop it. Raw and unfiltered and terrifying in its honesty. "I do not know." He was silent for a long moment. The fire crackled. The morning birds began their songs outside. The world continued to turn, indifferent to the small drama playing out in this isolated cabin. Then quietly, his voice gentle in a way that seemed at odds with his size, with his power, he said, "You know what I am." It was not a question. There was no point in pretending, in maintaining the fiction that she had not seen his alpha mark, had not recognized it for what it was. She nodded, still not turning to face him, her hands busy with the tea ceremony, measuring and pouring with meticulous care. "I am William Goldenmur, Alpha King of the Northern Pack." The words fell like stones into water, creating ripples that would spread outward, would change everything, would make this real in a way it had not been before. Damaris felt the teacup tremble in her hands. The ceramic clattered against the wooden counter, a small sound that seemed impossibly loud in the quiet cabin. Not just an alpha. The alpha. The leader of the pack that had been her people's enemy for as long as anyone could remember. Longer than living memory, stretching back into legend and myth. The man whose name was spoken with hatred and fear in equal measure around her pack's council fires. The warrior said to be unstoppable in battle, merciless to his enemies, a force of nature wrapped in wolf skin and human flesh. Stories about William Goldenmure were told to young wolves to teach them about strength and cunning, to frighten them into obedience, to illustrate what true power looked like. He had led the northern pack for 15 years, since he was barely more than a boy himself, had transformed them from a scattered coalition of families into the most formidable force in the region. He was a legend, a nightmare, a name that carried weight, and he was sitting in her bed, wounded and vulnerable, trusting her with his life. She turned to look at him, really look at him. Stripped of his power, reduced to wounded flesh and bone, he did not look merciless. The gold eyes that met hers were not the eyes of a monster. They were tired, yes, worn down by years of leadership and conflict, but also kind, intelligent, and something else that took her breath away. Afraid. William Goldenmure, the Alpha King who supposedly feared nothing, was afraid. Not of death. He had clearly made peace with that possibility when he lay bleeding in the ravine. But of something else. Something that made his jaw clench and his hands fist in the blanket. "If your Alpha discovers me here," William continued, his voice low and measured, each word carefully chosen, "he will execute me. No trial. No mercy. It will be swift and brutal and final. And you cannot blame him. I would do the same in his position. An enemy Alpha, wounded and helpless, is too valuable a prize to waste with quick death. But neither can he afford to let me live." Damaris opened her mouth, but he was not finished. "And if my pack comes looking and finds me with you, they will assume I was captured. Tortured. They will see me in this state and believe I gave up secrets under duress, that I betrayed them. They will think you extracted information from me, used your healing skills to keep me alive just long enough to serve your Alpha's purposes." William's voice grew harder, edged with steel. "They will raise your territory in retaliation. They will burn every cabin, every den, every sacred place. They will leave nothing but ash and memory. Not out of hatred, but out of necessity. To show that attacking their Alpha comes with consequences too severe to contemplate." "I know," Damaris whispered, the words barely audible. She had thought through all of this during the long nights of his recovery, had catalogued every possible consequence, had painted each nightmare scenario in vivid detail. And yet, she had continued to heal him, continued to save him, continued to doom herself. Then why? The question again, more urgent now, rawer, stripped of politeness. His gold eyes burned into hers, demanding truth, deserving it after everything. Why risk everything for your enemy? What could possibly be worth the price you will pay? She brought him the tea, the ceramic cup warm between her hands, steam rising in delicate curls. She settled onto the edge of the bed, close enough that she could see the silver scars scattered across his chest beneath the bandages, the evidence of a lifetime of battles. Their eyes met, and the air between them crackled with something electric, something neither could name, but both could feel. A connection that defied logic and loyalty, and every law written and unwritten. "Because when I found you," she said slowly, choosing her words with the same care he had used, "you were not my enemy." The words came from somewhere deep inside, somewhere she had not known existed until this moment. "You were not the Alpha King. You were not William Goldenmure, destroyer of packs, terror of the borderlands, the wolf my people fear more than winter and famine combined. You were just a man dying alone in the darkness, broken and bleeding and fighting for every breath. And I could not walk away from that." She paused, gathering courage, forcing herself to continue even though her voice shook. "I have spent my entire life on the edges of my pack, never quite belonging, never quite fitting. The white hair makes me strange, different, wrong somehow. I understand what it is to be alone, and when I saw you there, I saw myself. Not pack, not politics, just someone who deserved not to die alone and unmourned in the dark. William's hand moved, slowly, carefully, telegraphing his intention, giving her every opportunity to pull away. His fingers touched hers where they rested on the blanket between them. The contact sent a shock through her entire body, like lightning channeled through skin, like fire and ice and every sensation in between. She gasped, not from fear, but from the intensity of it, from the rightness of even this small touch. "Thank you," he said, and the simple words carried the weight of an oath, of a vow, of a promise that transcended pack and politics and everything that should have made this impossible. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, a gentle rhythm that anchored her, that made the chaos of the last 3 days suddenly make sense. Not just for saving my life, for seeing me, for giving me dignity when I had none, for caring when you had no reason to, for being brave enough to follow your heart instead of your hate. "Now we need to find a way to keep you alive," Damaris replied, pulling her hand back with reluctance, with actual physical pain at the separation, though it cost her. The practical part of her brain was reasserting itself, the part that understood they could not hide here forever, that eventually the world would intrude on their sanctuary. If you go back to your pack now, whoever tried to kill you will try again. They will be more careful this time, more thorough, and you will be weaker for your injuries, easier to finish. If you stay here, you will be discovered eventually. My pack conducts regular patrols. Someone will notice I have not been seen. Someone will come to check on the strange white-haired healer who lives alone at the border. What were you doing in my territory in the first place?" William's jaw tightened, muscles jumping beneath the beard. He looked away from her, toward the window where morning light painted the world in shades of gold and amber, transforming the ordinary forest into something magical. His eyes tracked something she could not see, some memory or vision that brought pain to his features. "I was coming to negotiate peace." The words fell like stones into still water, creating ripples that spread and spread, washing against the shores of everything she thought she knew about him, about their packs, about the nature of their conflict. Damaris stared at him, her tea forgotten, cooling in her hands. "Peace? Our packs have been at war for generations. Since before my grandmother was born. Since before anyone can remember why it started in the first place. We have made hatred into tradition, turned enmity into identity. Your name is used to frighten children in my pack. My father died fighting yours." The last words came out harder than she intended, sharp with old pain, with a grief she thought she had buried years ago. But William did not flinch from it, did not offer hollow apologies or false comfort. He simply held her gaze and nodded, acknowledging the truth of it. "And my father died fighting your pack," he said quietly. 20 years ago, in the same conflict that killed your father. I was 15, still learning what it meant to be alpha, still believing that strength came from conquest, that power came from dominance. His death forced me to take leadership before I was ready, before I understood the weight of it, before I knew that every decision I made would be paid for in wolf blood. William's hand clenched into a fist on the blanket, the knuckles white with tension. His jaw worked, emotions flickering across his face too quickly to name. Grief, anger, regret, all of it raw despite the passage of time. "Exactly," William said, the word coming out harsh, forceful. His gold eyes returned to hers, burning with intensity that made her catch her breath. Generations of fighting over the same disputed borders. Generations of young wolves dying for pride and old grudges. For what? What have we gained from all this death? The borders remain essentially unchanged. The territory we fight over is no more valuable than the land we already hold. We burn resources and lives fighting each other, while real threats gather at our doorsteps. He leaned forward despite the pain it clearly caused him, despite the way his ribs protested the movement. His voice dropped lower, more urgent, compelling her to listen, to understand. The vampires grow stronger in the east. Every year they push further into what should be our hunting grounds. They take humans from the villages that trade with us, turning them into more vampires, building their armies in the shadows while we are distracted with each other. And the humans encroach from the west, with their guns and their steel and their relentless expansion. They clear forests we have used for centuries. They dam rivers that belong to no one. They build roads that cut through sacred places. William's words painted a picture she could not deny, a truth she had seen herself but never connected into a coherent whole. Her pack was smaller than it had been in her childhood. Territories that once belonged to them had been abandoned, lost to vampire predation or human development, while they focused all their attention on fighting the northern pack. And we tear each other apart over land that will mean nothing if we are all destroyed, he finished, his voice rough with frustration and something that sounded like desperation. We will have won our eternal war just in time to be wiped out by enemies we were too proud and too stupid to see coming. You wanted to end the war, Damaris said slowly, understanding dawning like sunrise, gradual, and then all at once. Not just pause it, not just negotiate a temporary truce. You wanted real peace, lasting peace. You were willing to risk your life for it. William nodded, then laughed, a bitter sound without humor. I was willing to risk my life for it. And it turns out I was right to worry. He touched his bandaged ribs, a reminder of how close he had come to succeeding in his own assassination. But your alpha, Matthias Stormclaw, he has built his entire leadership on hatred of my pack. It is the foundation of his authority, the justification for every hard decision he makes, every sacrifice he demands. William's assessment was accurate, and she knew it. Alpha Matthias spoke of the northern pack the way some wolves spoke of winter, as an inevitable force, a test of strength, a crucible that proved their worth. Any official peace attempt would be seen as weakness, as surrender, as betrayal of everything he stood for, everything he had built his reputation on. He would reject it publicly and use it to rally his wolves for renewed attacks. Damaris finished the thought, seeing the truth of it clearly. He would frame it as proof that the northern pack is weak, that you are desperate, that victory is finally within reach if we just push a little harder. A few more sacrifices, a few more deaths, just a little more blood, and the war will be won. So you came in secret, she continued, the pieces falling into place. You tried to reach neutral ground where you could negotiate without your pack knowing, without giving the warhawks in your own territory a chance to stop you. William's expression was grim, carved from stone and shadow. I had to try. I could not continue to send wolves to die for a cause I no longer believed in, for borders that did not matter, for hatred I did not feel. But someone in my own pack discovered my plan. Someone who values war more than peace. Someone who profits from conflict. Your own people tried to kill you, Damaris whispered, horror and understanding dawning simultaneously. The people you have led for 15 years, the wolves who should have trusted you, who should have followed you anywhere. They ambushed you. They tried to murder their own alpha rather than consider peace. Not all of them, William said, but his voice was hollow, emptied of the strength it had held moments before. But enough. There are those who profit from war, who crave it, merchants who sell weapons, warriors who have no identity beyond battle, strategists who have built their reputations on defeating the southern pack. For them, peace is not salvation. It is annihilation. It means becoming obsolete, irrelevant. They would rather die fighting than live in peace with former enemies. They would rather kill me than let me transform us into something they do not recognize. Damaris stood, pacing the small space of her cabin in tight circles, her red dress swirling around her legs like captured flame. Her mind raced, turning over possibilities, examining them from every angle, discarding those that would not work, refining those that might. She was a healer, not a politician, a solitary wolf, not a leader. But she had spent her life observing pack dynamics from the outside, seeing patterns that those trapped within the hierarchy often missed. If William simply returned to his pack, the Warhawks would kill him. They had proven they were willing to act once. They would not hesitate to finish what they started. If he stayed hidden indefinitely, he would be found eventually. Secrets did not keep in small communities where everyone knew everyone else's business. And if news of his presence here leaked before she could control the narrative, it would ignite the very war he had hoped to prevent. The conflict would consume them all, fueled by betrayal and rage and fear. Unless an idea formed in her mind, fragile as spider silk, dangerous as wildfire, but possible. Just barely possible. She turned to face him, her white hair catching the morning light streaming through the window, transforming it into a halo, into something divine. What if peace did not come from the alphas? She said slowly, the words taking shape as she spoke them, crystallizing from half-formed thoughts into actual strategy. What if it came from below? From the wolves themselves rather than from their leaders? William's brow furrowed, confusion and interest warring in his expression. His gold eyes tracked her as she moved, never leaving her face, drinking in every word, every gesture. What do you mean? She stopped pacing and sat on the edge of the bed again, close enough that their knees almost touched, close enough that she could see the flecks of darker gold in his eyes, like veins of ore in bedrock. Energy hummed through her as the plan took clearer shape, as she saw how it might actually work. The wolves do not want war, she said, her voice gaining confidence, gaining strength. Not really. They want safety, prosperity, a future for their children. They want to hunt without fear of ambush. They want to raise pups without wondering which of them will die in the next border skirmish. They want enough food stores for winter and medicines for sickness and trade goods for comfort. The war gives them none of these things. It takes them away. But they believe there is no alternative. That this is simply how things are. How they have always been. How they must always be. She leaned forward, her dark eyes blazing with sudden purpose, with a vision of what could be. What if we gave them an alternative? What if we created situations where both packs had to cooperate? Small things at first. Nothing that looks like official policy. Nothing that threatens the alphas directly. Just practical solutions to practical problems that happen to require both packs working together. She could see understanding beginning to dawn on William's face, his expression shifting from confusion to comprehension, to something that looked like hope. Dangerous hope. The kind that could get you killed, or could save the world depending on how carefully you nurtured it. Joint hunts against common threats, she continued, the ideas flowing now, tumbling over each other in their eagerness to be spoken. A rogue bear terrorizing both territories, a pack of feral dogs killing livestock. The kind of problems that hurt everyone and can only be solved by cooperation. Shared resources during harsh winters. One pack has surplus grain, the other has extra furs. Arrange trades through neutral intermediaries, so it does not look like collaboration, but like smart economics. Build connections through mutual benefit. You want to build peace from the bottom up, William said, his voice tinged with wonder, with the awe of someone seeing a puzzle suddenly solve itself. His hand reached out again, this time settling on her knee, warm and heavy and grounding. Make it so natural, so beneficial, that by the time the alphas realize what is happening, their own wolves will demand they formalize it. Create a situation where rejecting peace makes them look foolish rather than strong. Exactly. Damaris breathed, exhilarated by the rightness of it, by the way he understood immediately, by the way they seemed to think in parallel, completing each other's thoughts. If peace comes from the alphas, it can be rejected as weakness. But if it comes from the wolves themselves, if it is already working, already making their lives better, then the alphas have to acknowledge it. They have to formalize what already exists. Otherwise, they risk looking like they are clinging to war for its own sake, rather than for the good of their people. "It is brilliant," William said, his gold eyes bright with something that looked like pride, like admiration, like something deeper she was not ready to name. His fingers tightened slightly on her knee, the touch burning through the fabric of her dress, marking her skin beneath. Then his expression fell, shadows returning to his face like clouds covering the sun. And impossible. How would we coordinate such a thing? I cannot even return to my territory safely. They think I am dead, and if I resurface, the ones who tried to kill me will simply try again. I would be walking back into the execution they planned for me. "You do not need to return yet," Damaris said, her voice firm, brooking no argument. Her hand covered his where it rested on her knee, small and pale against his dark skin, but steady, sure. "You stay here, hidden, recovering. I have contacts, wolves who trade with neutral packs, who move between territories for business or family reasons, merchants and healers and wanderers who owe loyalty to no single alpha. I can send messages through them, plant ideas, suggest opportunities, make sure the right wolves are in the right places at the right times." She paused, considering, calculating the resources she had available, the networks she could tap into. Her isolation had given her something most pack wolves did not have: connections outside the pack hierarchy, relationships with neutrals and wanderers who did not care about ancient feuds. "And you can do the same," she continued, looking at him intently. "Through whatever secure channels you still have access to. You must have allies in your pack. Wolves who supported your peace initiative even if they could not save you from the Warhawks. Wolves who are tired of fighting, who want what you want. Contact them carefully. Give them guidance. Help them create the same opportunities on your side." William was silent for a long moment, his eyes searching her face as if memorizing every feature, every line, every freckle and expression. The weight of his gaze was physical, pressing against her like a tangible force. Then, slowly, deliberately, he smiled. It transformed his face completely, chasing away the hardness, the weariness, the scars of leadership. For a moment he looked younger, lighter, like the boy he must have been before war, and responsibility crushed the joy out of him. "Why are you doing this?" he asked softly, his free hand coming up to cup her cheek, his thumb tracing the line of her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "You owe me nothing. You owe my pack nothing. Why risk everything for a peace that may never come? Why tie your fate to mine when you know how dangerous that is?" Damaris closed her eyes, leaning into his touch despite every instinct that screamed at her to maintain distance, to protect herself, to avoid the vulnerability that came with caring. "Because I am tired of death," she whispered. And when she opened her eyes again, they shone with unshed tears, with a pain she had carried for so long she had forgotten it was there. "Tired of fear, tired of watching wolves I have known all my life march off to battle knowing some will never return. Tired of treating wounds that could have been avoided if we just stopped. Stopped hating. Stopped fighting. Stopped pretending this war serves any purpose beyond feeding itself." Her hand came up to cover his where it cupped her face, holding it there, anchoring herself to this moment, to this impossible connection. "Because you were right," she continued, her voice stronger now, more certain. "We are destroying ourselves while real threats gather at our borders. I have seen it. Treated wolf bites that were not from wolf teeth. Heard stories of disappearances that do not fit pack attack patterns. The vampires are coming, They have been coming for years. We just refuse to see it because we are too busy looking at each other." She paused, gathering courage for what came next, for the admission that felt like jumping off a cliff with no idea if the ground would catch her or shatter her. "And because when I look at you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I do not see an enemy. I see someone who is willing to die for peace, someone who chose mercy over vengeance, someone who sees the world as it could be, rather than as it has always been. That is worth saving, worth fighting for, worth risking everything." Their eyes held, gold meeting dark, the air between them thick with tension, with possibility, with something ancient and undeniable that thrummed through their blood and resonated in their bones. William lifted his other hand, slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, to retreat to safety, to choose self-preservation over this impossible connection. His fingers brushed her other cheek, his large hands framing her face like she was something precious, something irreplaceable, something worth protecting with his life. Damaris. He breathed her name like a prayer, like a vow, like a word that contained universes. His forehead came to rest against hers, his breath mingling with hers, his scent surrounding her, cedar and smoke, and something uniquely him. She should have moved, should have maintained the distance that had kept her safe, kept her whole, kept her from being hurt by caring too much. But instead, she found herself leaning closer, drawn by a force stronger than gravity, more inevitable than the tide. Her hands found their way to his shoulders, feeling the strength in them even weakened by injury, feeling the warmth of his skin through the bandages. "This is dangerous," she whispered, the words more for herself than for him. "I know," his response equally quiet, equally honest. "This could destroy us both." "I know. Then why does it feel so right?" William's other hand came up, framing her face, tilting it toward his. "Because some things are worth the risk," he said. "Some things are inevitable." He kissed her. It was gentle at first, questioning, giving her the choice. But when she responded, when her hands found their way to his shoulders, and she kissed him back with equal fervor, gentleness transformed into hunger, into need, into a connection that felt older than either of them, written in their very DNA. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, William rested his forehead against hers. "This changes everything," he said. "I know," Damaris replied. "And I do not care." Over the following weeks they worked. Damaris used her connections, carefully, subtly. A merchant who traded herbs to both packs received suggestions about new routes that happened to require minimal cooperation between border guards. A neutral pack mediator found anonymous tips about shared threats, rogue wolves causing trouble in territories belonging to both sides. Small incidents that required small collaborations. Meanwhile, William recovered. His strength returned day by day, his wounds healing with the supernatural speed of his kind. But he did not leave. Each morning, Damaris expected to wake and find him gone. Each morning, he was still there. They fell into a rhythm. She would hunt or gather. He would prepare meals from her stores, his culinary skills a surprising revelation. They would plan their next moves, debate strategies, argue about tactics, and in the evenings, by firelight, they would talk. He told her about his childhood, raised to be a weapon, trained to lead, never allowed to show weakness, about the loneliness of being alpha, surrounded by wolves who feared or worshipped him but never simply saw him, about his dreams of a united kingdom where strength came from cooperation rather than conquest. She told him about growing up on the edges, too different with her white hair and strange instincts, never quite fitting with the rest of the pack, about losing her parents to a border skirmish when she was young, raised by the pack, but always apart, about choosing solitude not because she preferred it, but because it hurt less than trying to belong. "I see you," William told her one night, his hand covering hers. "Not what you can do for me or what you represent. Just you, and you are magnificent." Damaris felt tears prick her eyes. No one had ever said such things to her. No one had ever looked at her the way he did, as though she were the only thing in the world that mattered. Their relationship deepened with each passing day. William's duality became clear. When he spoke of strategy, of dealing with threats or managing pack politics, his voice took on an edge of steel, his eyes hardening into those of a warrior king. But with her, he was different. Tender, protective, devoted. He would stand behind her while she cooked, his arms around her waist, his chin resting on her head. He would braid her white hair with surprising gentleness, his large fingers deft and careful. When nightmares woke him, remnants of his attack, she would hold him until the trembling stopped, and he would cling to her as though she were the only solid thing in a shifting world. "I was dying before you found me," he told her one night, his voice rough with emotion. "Not just in that ravine. I have been dying for years, going through the motions of leadership, of strength, of everything an alpha should be. But inside, I was hollow, empty. You brought me back to life." "You brought yourself back," Damaris corrected gently. "I just gave you a safe place to do it." "You gave me everything," William insisted. He cupped her face, his gold eyes intense. "I love you, Damaris Cosmos. I have loved you since I woke up and saw you, exhausted and covered in my blood, still fighting to save me. I will love you until my last breath and beyond." The declaration hung in the air between them, enormous and terrifying and perfect. "I love you too," she whispered, and then louder, stronger. "I love you, William Goldenmoor, my enemy, my salvation, my heart." They made love that night with a desperation born of borrowed time. Both knew this peace could not last forever. Eventually, decisions would have to be made, confrontations faced. But for now, they had this cabin, this moment, each other. William was fierce in his passion, but infinitely gentle with her. His touch worshipful, his kisses deep and consuming. He made her feel cherished and desired in equal measure, powerful and protected simultaneously. And when he held her afterward, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear, she felt truly home for the first time in her life. But reality has a way of intruding on even the most perfect sanctuaries. 2 months after she found him, Damaris returned from gathering to find William standing at the window, his body tense, his face grave. "They know," he said without preamble. "My pack has been searching, and yours has noticed your extended absences. It is only a matter of time before someone comes." "What do we do?" Damaris asked, though she already knew the answer. "We accelerate the plan," William said. "We force the confrontation now, on our terms, with what we have built already in place." Fear clutched at her heart. It is too soon. The cooperation is too fragile. William turned to her, crossing the space between them in 2 strides. He took her hands, his grip firm and reassuring. "It will never feel like enough time, but we have accomplished more in 2 months than I dreamed possible. Border incidents are down. Trade has increased. Wolves from both packs are talking, sharing resources. The foundation is there, and if the alphas reject it, if they decide to go to war anyway, then we fight," William said simply. "But together, not against each other." Damaris looked up at him, this man who had become her entire world. "How did I ever think of you as an enemy?" William smiled, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Because that is what I was, until you changed me, changed everything." The next day, Damaris did the unthinkable. She requested an audience with Alpha Matthias Stormclaw. Her alpha was a grizzled warrior, scarred and suspicious, who had led their pack through decades of conflict. When she was brought before him, His eyes narrowed with distrust. "Damaris Cosmos," he growled. "You who live on the edges and answer to no one. What brings you before me?" "Information," she replied, keeping her voice steady. "Information that will determine whether our pack survives the coming months." "Bold words from one so young," Matthias said, but he gestured for her to continue. "I have discovered that William Goldenmuir, Alpha King of the Northern Pack, survived an assassination attempt by his own wolves. He sought to come here to negotiate peace before his own war faction stopped him." Matthias lunged to his feet. "Goldenmuir lives?" "Where?" "Recovering," Damaris said calmly. "But that is not what matters. What matters is why he was willing to risk everything for peace. The vampires in the east are gathering Alpha. While we fight each other, a true threat grows, and the evidence is already here, in our own territory." She produced documents, carefully prepared, showing vampire movements, attacks on outlying farms, disappearances, things she and William had pieced together over weeks of research and intelligence gathering. Matthias studied them, his expression darkening. "This means nothing," he finally said. "Goldenmuir could have fabricated this, could be using you." "Which is why I propose a meeting," Damaris said. "Neutral ground. You, William Goldenmuir, and witnesses from both packs. Let him present his case. Let the evidence speak. And if you still believe war is the answer, then proceed. But at least know what you are choosing. And if I refuse, if I simply demand you tell me where Goldenmuir hides," Damaris lifted her chin, "then you will have to hunt for him. And while you do, the vampires will continue to grow stronger. The choice is yours, Alpha." The silence stretched, taut as a bowstring. Finally, Matthias laughed, a harsh bark of sound. "You have courage, girl. Foolish courage, perhaps, but courage nonetheless. Very well. Arrange your meeting. But know this. If this is a trap, if Goldenmuir shows any sign of treachery, I will kill him myself, and you will answer for your part in it." "Understood," Damaris said. 3 days later, in a clearing that had once been a battlefield, but now grew wild with flowers, 2 alphas met without weapons for the first time in living memory. William Goldenmuir stood tall, his black hair braided back, his beard trimmed, his injuries healed enough to hide. He looked every inch the Alpha King, powerful and commanding. But when his eyes found Damaris among the gathered witnesses, they softened with unmistakable love. Matthias Stormclaw arrived with his lieutenants, bristling with barely contained aggression. The 2 alphas faced each other across 10 feet of grass and centuries of hatred. "You wanted peace," Matthias said, his voice dripping with scorn. "Speak then. Convince me why I should not end you where you stand." William did not rise to the bait. Instead, he gestured to one of his own wolves, who stepped forward with maps and documents. "Because whether you end me or not, the vampires will still come," William said calmly. "Look at the evidence. Coordinated attacks on both our territories. They are testing our defenses, learning our patrol patterns. They grow bolder because they know we are divided." "We can handle vampires," Matthias growled. "Can you?" William challenged. "Alone? Because that is what you will be if you reject this alliance. My pack has no interest in continued war with you. We have bigger threats to face. The question is whether you are too proud to see that." "Pride?" Matthias snarled. "Your pack killed my brother, and yours killed my father," William shot back, his voice hard as iron. "We can trade grievances until the world ends, or we can acknowledge that we are stronger together than apart." The gathered wolves murmured, whispers spreading through both groups. Damaris held her breath, watching the 2 alphas circle each other like the wolves they were. Then Matthias did something unexpected. He looked at Damaris. "Tell me," he said. "You who live apart from pack politics, you who saved this man despite everything, Do you truly believe peace is possible? Damaris stepped forward, aware of all eyes on her. I believe peace is necessary. I believe we have a choice between dying proud and alone, or surviving humble and united. I have watched both packs these past months. I have seen cooperation begin to take root, small acts of trust that cost nothing but yielded everything. Yes, Alpha. I believe peace is not only possible but inevitable. The only question is whether we embrace it, or whether we wait until we are so weakened that we have no choice. Matthias studied her for a long moment. Then he turned back to William. You love her. It was not a question. William did not hesitate. With everything I am, she is of my pack. I know. And yet you would have me believe you want peace, not conquest? That this is not some elaborate plan to weaken us through infiltration? William's laugh was bitter. If I wanted to weaken you, I would simply let you continue on your current path. You bleed warriors every season to border skirmishes that accomplish nothing. Your territory shrinks while you focus on me instead of the vampires claiming your eastern lands. No, Alpha Stormclaw. I do not need to conquer you. You are conquering yourself. The words should have sparked violence. Instead, Matthias seemed to deflate slightly, because he knew the truth of them. What do you propose? He finally asked. A treaty, William said. 100 years of peace. Joint patrols along the vampire borders, shared intelligence, trade agreements, and a unification of our packs under a council of alphas, not a single king. You would give up absolute power? Matthias asked, skeptical. I would trade absolute power for survival, William replied, for a future, for the chance to fight real enemies instead of manufactured ones. The clearing fell silent. Every wolf present seemed to hold their breath. Then, slowly, deliberately, Matthias Stormclaw extended his hand. Show me these vampires, he said. Show me the threat is real, and if it is, we will discuss your treaty. William clasped his hand, and the grip between them was bone-crushing, a test of strength and will. But neither backed down. Neither let go first. When they finally released each other, both alphas wore grim smiles. Over the next weeks, the evidence mounted. Joint patrols discovered vampire nests in previously unexplored territories. Attacks that had been attributed to wildlife or accident were revealed as coordinated vampire raids. The threat was not coming. It was already here. The treaty negotiations were fierce. Both alphas fought for their pack's interests with the same intensity they had once fought each other. But now they fought at a table, with words, with compromise. And through it all, Damaris and William stole moments together. Secret meetings in the forest, coded messages, touches that lingered too long to be innocent. We cannot keep this hidden forever, William told her one night, holding her close beneath the stars. When the treaty is signed, I want to claim you properly, before both our packs, as my mate. They will never accept it, Damaris whispered, though her heart soared at the words. They will have to, William said fiercely. You are the reason this peace exists. You are the bridge between our worlds, and you are mine, as I am yours. Let anyone who objects face me. His duality was never clearer than in those moments. The fierce alpha who would challenge the world for her. The gentle lover who held her like she was made of starlight. The treaty was signed on the next full moon, exactly 3 months after Damaris had found William dying in the ravine. 100 years of peace, formalized and sworn before both packs. Trade routes opened, joint training exercises planned, a council formed with alphas from both sides. But the vampires did not wait for the ink to dry. They attacked in force, hundreds of them, pouring from the eastern territories in a coordinated assault. They had been waiting, watching, and they had chosen their moment perfectly. Strike while the packs were still adjusting to alliance, still uncertain in their cooperation. It nearly worked. The battle raged for 3 days and nights. William led the front lines, a whirlwind of fur and fury, his alpha form massive and unstoppable. Matthias commanded the flanks, his tactical genius evident in every maneuver. And Damaris, who had never wanted to be a warrior, found herself coordinating supplies, managing wounded, and directing reinforcements with a clarity born of desperation. She saw William fall beneath a wave of vampires and felt her heart stop. But he rose again, tearing through them with renewed savagery, his eyes finding hers across the battlefield, drawing strength from her presence. She saw Matthias take a blade meant for one of William's wolves, protecting a former enemy without hesitation. She saw wolves from both packs fighting side by side, protecting each other, bleeding together. On the third night, William and Matthias led a final assault on the vampire stronghold, a cavern system that had been growing beneath their territories for years. Damaris went with them, refusing to stay behind, carrying supplies and weapons for the warriors. Deep in the earth, surrounded by darkness and death, the Alphas fought the vampire lord himself, ancient and powerful. He had been feeding on their conflict for decades, growing stronger on their hatred. "You cannot win," he hissed, his voice like grinding stone. "You are wolves. You were born to tear each other apart." William and Matthias attacked as one, perfectly synchronized, moving like they had fought together for years instead of days. The vampire was strong, but he had miscalculated. He had expected division. He found unity. When the vampire lord fell, turning to ash beneath the combined might of 2 alphas, the remaining vampires broke and fled. The battle was won, but the cost had been high. Wolves from both packs lay dead or dying. The victory was real, but it was written in blood. As dawn broke over the battlefield, Damaris found William standing at the edge of the carnage, his body covered in wounds, his eyes distant. She went to him, and he folded her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. "We won," she whispered. "Did we?" he asked, his voice hollow. "Look at what it cost. Look at what we saved," Damaris countered. She pulled back, making him meet her eyes. Without this alliance, without the peace, we would have all died. Instead, we stand together, bloodied but unbroken. "That is victory, William. That is what you fought for." "What you fought for," he corrected. "You started this. You chose compassion over hatred. You chose me." "I would choose you again," Damaris said fiercely. "Every time, in every life." William kissed her then, in front of both packs, claiming her openly for all to see. And when they broke apart, Matthias was standing nearby, a knowing smile on his scarred face. "I suppose this was inevitable," the old alpha said. "You two have been circling each other like lovesick cubs since the treaty talks began." "I want to make her my mate," William said, no request in his voice. "Just statement. My queen." Matthias looked at Damaris. "And what do you want, girl?" "I want to stop being called girl," Damaris said with a slight smile. "And I want to stand beside William. Not behind him. Not beneath him. Beside him." "Then it is settled," Matthias declared. He looked around at the gathered wolves, exhausted and wounded but alive. "Let this be known. Damaris Cosmos, who found an enemy dying and chose mercy over vengeance, who built peace with her own hands, who fought beside us in our darkest hour, will stand as queen beside Alpha King William Goldenmoor. Let any who object speak now." Silence. Then, from both packs, howls rose into the morning air. Not of war, of celebration. The mating ceremony took place a week later, when the wounded had been tended and the dead honored. It was a fusion of both packs' traditions, conducted in the clearing where the treaty had been signed. Damaris wore red, the color of her choice, her white hair unbound and flowing. William wore the formal regalia of his station, but his eyes never left her face. When they exchanged vows, when they marked each other as mates before their people, The bond that snapped into place between them was so powerful that every wolf present felt it. A connection deeper than pack, stronger than duty. "This is what we fight for," William told the gathered wolves, Damaris's hand in his. "Not territory, not pride, but this. Connection. Love. A future where we choose each other over conflict, where we build instead of destroy." The packs merged over the following months, becoming something new. Not northern or southern, but united. The Council of Alphas governed wisely, with William and Matthias sharing leadership, their former rivalry transformed into mutual respect. And Damaris, who had spent her life on the edges, found herself at the center. Not because she sought power, but because wolves from both packs came to her, seeking advice, sharing problems, trusting her to bridge gaps and find solutions. She and William ruled together, his strength and her wisdom complementing each other perfectly. He was still fierce to the world, still the warrior king when needed. But with her, he was gentle, devoted, a man who had found his home in her arms. Years later, standing on the balcony of the keep they had built together, watching their united pack celebrate the anniversary of the treaty, Damaris leaned back against William's chest. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "Giving up absolute power for this?" William's arms tightened around her. "I gave up nothing," he said. "I gained everything." He turned her to face him, his gold eyes bright with love. "You found me dying in a ravine and gave me a reason to live. You took a broken alpha and made him whole. You united a kingdom with compassion and courage. How could I ever regret that?" Damaris smiled, rising on her toes to kiss him. "No regrets, then. For either of us." "No regrets," William agreed. "Only gratitude. For that full moon night. For your choice. For every moment since." They stood together as the sun set. Two souls who had found each other against impossible odds, who had chosen love over hatred, peace over war, and in doing so, had changed the fate of an entire kingdom. The legends would speak of the Treaty of the Full Moon, of the alliance that saved the wolf packs from destruction. But those who were there, who had witnessed it all, knew the truth. It was not politics that changed the kingdom, not strategy or warfare. It was one woman, walking alone through the forest, who found an enemy dying and chose mercy, who saw past centuries of hatred to the man beneath, who risked everything for peace. That single decision, made in a moment of compassion on a moonlit night, had shifted the course of history. Had proven that sometimes the bravest thing a warrior can do is choose not to fight. That sometimes the strongest thing a leader can do is admit they need help. That sometimes the most powerful force in the world is simply one person refusing to let hatred win. And so the kingdom entered a new era. Not the age of war, but the age of wisdom. The time when Damaris Cosmus found an enemy and saved a king. When love conquered conflict. When two wolves from rival packs became one. Their story would be told for generations. Not as a fairy tale, but as a reminder. That every person, in every moment, has the power to choose. To act with compassion or cruelty. To build bridges or walls. Damaris had chosen compassion, had chosen to build, had chosen love. And in that choice she had saved not just one man, but an entire kingdom. The full moon rose again over the United Territories, casting its silver light on a land finally at peace. And in the keep, two mates held each other close, grateful for the chance meeting that had become destiny, for the impossible love that had become legend, for the single decision that had changed everything. She had found the rival pack's Alpha King dying in a ravine, unaware that her decision would shift the kingdom. But now, with him sleeping peacefully in her arms, with their people safe and thriving around them, with a future bright with possibility stretching ahead, Damaris Cosmus knew exactly what her choice had accomplished. Everything. It had accomplished everything. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this beautiful love story. Let us know what you thought of this tale full of emotions and surprises. Tell us your name, where you're watching from, and rate this story from 0 to 10 if it touched your heart. And if you enjoyed the plot, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the amazing new stories coming soon. See you next time.